Council of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, to be held on Monday, June 17th, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the City Council Chambers at 301 South 5th Street. We will have invocation by Pastor Greg Gilberto of Northpoint Nazarene Church.
Yes, I need to use this official microphone so you can hear me.
Yeah, we want you to be official.
I know God hears me, but we all need to agree together, right? That's right. Amen. I'm honored to stand in front of you. I love every one of you. I know you. I know where you live. Amen. So, the Lord prepares us for moments like this, and He's prepared me today for tonight. So let's look to Him. Father, we find it a joy and an honor to stand in front of these wonderful, incredible people. There's a lot of wisdom around this table, but Father, this is our home. 20 years ago, almost to this date, I drove into this place wondering, what is Poplar Bluff? What is that? And it's not just a place to stay, it's a place to live. And Father, we're not going anywhere, and this is where we put our roots. But Father, I thank you for this city council. I thank you for the decisions that are there, there's some decisions that are going to be made tonight. Maybe that's going to change the course of generations. And it's not ordinances, and it's not rules, and it's not how far we can zone. But Father, your will be done in this place. That's what we're asking. Thy will be done on earth as it is in Poplar Bluff. Move, Lord, on these wonderful people. Lord, and I pray that also as we think about where we are geographically in this nation, we're right in the middle. This is the heartland. This is right where the crosshairs hit. And I also know that, Father, because of that, the enemy's trying to confuse and transcend and move. But, Father, greater is He that's in us than he that's in the world. And I pray a fiery hedge of protection over each and every family represented through these beautiful people. Bless our mayor. Bless this council. Bless this meeting. May God's Spirit be felt and sensed. Everything that's said and done today, we pray this in Jesus' name. And everyone here said? Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, roll call. Mrs. Young, please.
Councilwoman Parson? Here. Councilwoman Horton? Here. Councilman Black?
Here.
Councilman DeGaris?
Here.
Councilman Cornman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Any member of the City Council may disclose any possible conflict of interest dealing with either any item on the printed agenda or with any matter discussed at a previous meeting. Hearing none, we will have item 6, the citizens' input. Each person in the audience may take this opportunity to address the City Council on any matter which is not on the printed agenda. I think we have Mrs. Jerica Fox.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm here tonight before you to request fireworks for our annual 4th of July celebration. Before you do that, I just kind of wanted to give an update of what we're doing this year. So we will have the 4th of July parade as always. It will be on Thursday. Our rain date is always the Saturday following. But as of now, lineup begins at Hydro Adventures at 8 a.m. The parade begins at 9. Again, sponsored by Fox Media Network. So we're very thankful for them for doing that, and for Hydro Adventures for allowing us their parking lot that morning to get started. Something we started a few years ago is a market celebration that evening. Something we found is that people drove downtown or drove into the city to watch the fireworks, sat in their car for hours so they had a good spot, but had nothing to do until 9:15 when it got dark to watch the actual show. So we created an event in conjunction with our farmers market. It is at the farmers market pavilion. This year we've tripled our vendor count. People that anywhere from food and drinks to music and entertainment to shopping for clothes. I mean, there's a huge variety of vendors that'll be there this year. That's from 4 to 9 p.m. on Thursday evening, and then at around 9:05 to 9:15 is when the fireworks will go off. We try to do it right at dark so we can see them the best. I really want to give a big thank you to New Wave Communications. They're the ones who sponsored our event this year, and of course Briggs & Stratton and Mid-Continent Steel and Wire are great supporters, and they're the reasons that we have the firework display every year. So that's all I have.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you all.
Thanks for all you do.
Item 7, we have a prestigious award tonight to present to Mr. Bill Bach from the Municipal Utilities Department. Mr. Bach, would you please come forward, please? This award is the National Award for the year 2018. This is Charlie Burkett, electrical and liability award for outstanding achievement. Presented to Poplar government institute in recognition of his excellent record in electric reliability and safety. Thank you so much. Item 8 is the consent agenda. All of the items are approved by single action of the city council. If any council member would like to have any item removed from the consent agenda and considered separately, he or she may request to do so. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 9, workshop items for discussion. The City Council of Poplar Bluff will review bids received for the 11th Street Manufacturing Roadway Project.
Yes, this is for the new roadway off of South 11th Street for the new manufacturing plant Empire. We took bids, actually had 3 bids. Zollner out of Perryville was $289,994. Robertson Bridge and Grading had a bid with asphalt for $237,321.95. They did not bid the alternate, which would have been concrete. And RLP out of Poplar Bluff with concrete road would be $244,763.50. The engineers and I think most people felt like the concrete was the way to go. The road will last a lot longer and that's what we are recommending as the bid from RLP.
We need a motion to accept this bid as presented.
I'll make that motion, accept the bid and move it to the voting session to be held tonight.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item B, the city council will review a recommendation to authorize the issuance of not to exceed $20 million principal amount of combined waterworks and sewage system revenue bonds from the State of Missouri Direct Loan Program, Series 2019 of the City of Poplar, Bluff, Missouri, for the purpose of extending and improving the city's combined waterworks and sewage system, prescribing the form and details of the bonds and the agreements made by the city to facilitate and protect their payment, and prescribing or related matters, and other related matters.
Yes, this is the next step for financing of the bonds that we need to send to DNR. This bond to measure was approved, I think, in 2012. It's for the wastewater treatment plant that was discussed at several of the last meetings. I also passed out a letter from Department of Natural Resources, and I won't read it all, but it says, the city may award the wastewater plant upgrades to Robertson Contractors Incorporated for the amount of $18,910,249. And as I said, this is the next step in this process. I was hoping somebody from Gilmore Bell, the bond attorneys, could be here tonight, but she is on vacation up until July. Be happy to try to answer any questions you have. Or Mr. Box here also, if you want to ask him any questions.
If there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to move this to the July 1st voting session.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The City Council will review a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve an amendment to land use regulations to restrict the location of medical marijuana facilities in the city of Poplar Bluff. Mr. Winters.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So in November of 2018, voters of Missouri approved legislation to legalize marijuana for medical use. Statewide, 65.5% of Missourians voted in that election voted to approve Constitutional Amendment 2. And locally, 58% of Butler County residents that voted in the election also voted to approve the amendment. As defined by Amendment 2, the use is restricted to medical uses for qualified patients. Those patients include persons suffering from cancer, epilepsy, glaucoma, migraines, chronic medical conditions that cause severe pains, spasms, or seizures, debilitating psychiatric disorders, HIV, and any terminal illness, or other chronic medical conditions when approved by a physician. Constitutional Amendment Number 2 provides for 4 types of medical marijuana facilities that will be licensed and regulated by the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. These 4 types of facilities will be addressed in this proposal that Planning and Zoning has recommended to you tonight. The first one is a medical marijuana cultivation facility. This is a facility licensed by the state of Missouri to acquire, cultivate, process, store, transport, and sell marijuana to a medical dispensary facility, medical marijuana testing facility, or to a medical marijuana infused products manufacturing facility. The second is a medical marijuana dispensary facility. These are facilities licensed by the state of Missouri to acquire, store, sell, transport, and deliver marijuana, marijuana-infused products, and drug paraphernalia used to administer marijuana as provided for in this section to qualifying patients, primary caregivers, another medical marijuana dispensary facility, a medical marijuana testing facility, or a medical marijuana-infused products facility. The third facility is a marijuana-infused products manufacturing facility. This is a facility licensed by the state of Missouri to acquire, store, manufacture, transport, and sell marijuana-infused products to dispensaries, testing facilities, or other infusion manufacturing facilities. And finally is the marijuana testing facilities. This is a facility that's certified by the state of Missouri to acquire, test, certify, and transport marijuana. So according to the Department of Health and Senior Services website, the timeline that was laid out at the state level was the January 5th of 2019. Pre-filed application fees can begin to be accepted. June 4th of 2019, application forms and instructions were available. The final rules were passed May 24th. July 4th, applications for identification cards will begin to be accepted. And the primary reason for my bringing this to you is beginning August 3rd through August the 17th, facility applications will be accepted by the state of Missouri with the December 31st, 2019 deadline to approve the facility applications by the state of Missouri. So to address these changes to the Constitution and prepare for the possibility that any of these medical marijuana facilities may in the future want to locate within the city limits of Poplar Bluff, the changes you've received are being proposed by planning and zoning. There's several definitions. I won't read all those definitions. Those came straight out of the constitutional amendment that the state prepared. They define the child and daycare centers, churches, and other related items. So kind of what I wanted to touch on is a couple things. First is the permissive and conditional uses for these facilities within the city limits that Planning and Zoning Commission is proposing. The first is the proposal is to allow medical marijuana dispensaries to be a permissive use in the C2 General Commercial District. And secondly, the medical marijuana dispensaries as a conditional use in the C1 neighborhood districts, C1 neighborhood commercial districts, C3 central commercial districts, and the CX3, the central commercial mixed use district. On the medical marijuana infused products manufacturing, and a good way that I've watched several webinars and read several different presentations that were prepared by attorneys and law firms for other cities around the states. And one of the things that this was often compared to for the infused products is to think of it similarly as a bakery, where they'll be infusing edibles, lotions, and oils, and things like that into products. And so that's proposed to be added as a permissive use to the C2 General Commercial District, the M1 Light Industrial District, the M2 General Industrial District. Thirdly is the medical marijuana testing facilities. And these will be facilities that test the quality and the purity of marijuana before it's sold to the end user, kind of like basically a laboratory kind of environment. These are proposed to be added as permissive uses in the C2 General Commercial District, M1 Light Industrial District, and the M2 General Industrial District. And finally, the medical marijuana cultivation facilities. And the cultivation facilities can either be an indoor growing operation, such as a greenhouse, or an outdoor growing operation. These are proposed to be permitted to be added as permissive uses in the M1 Light Industrial District and the M2 General Industrial District. Some other changes in regards to the medical marijuana facilities. Number one, the compliance with state laws. Facilities shall remain compliant with Section 1, Article 16 of the Missouri Constitution. Number two, location of the facilities. Medical marijuana facilities are prohibited within set distances of schools, child daycare centers, and churches as defined by this section and the Constitution of Missouri. No marijuana-related uses shall be operated or maintained within 500 feet of any school, child daycare facility, or church. No marijuana-related uses shall be operated or maintained within 100 foot of a residentially zoned district, public park, or public library. Letter D, in the case of a facility that is part of a larger structure, I'm sorry, I skipped C, my fault. C, in case of a freestanding facility, the distance is measured between the school, the facility, the child daycare center, or church shall be measured from the external wall of the facility closest in proximity to the school, daycare, or church, to the closest point of the property line of the school, daycare, or church. D is in the case of a facility that is part of a larger structure, such as an office building or strip mall, the distance is measured from the property line of the facility's entrance or exit closest in proximity to the facility. And then E, measurements shall be made along the shortest path between the demarcation points that can be traveled by foot. So those those measurements, how the facilities are measured, that also comes out of the constitutional amendment that was, that's where those definitions and those distances came from. So number 3, no marijuana-related use facility shall emit an odor or in any way cause a public nuisance. Appropriate ventilation systems to prevent any marijuana odor or fumes from leaving the premises may be required if a nuisance occurs. 4, signage. Medical marijuana facilities shall not use signage or advertising other than that which includes the medical use of marijuana. Advertisement shall not be in a manner that promotes medical marijuana for recreational purposes or any other use other than medicinal purposes. Number 5, the hours of operation of all medical marijuana facilities, including delivery and distribution, are restricted to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I like, it's to provide some visual presentation, and so that's kind of what I did here. So I went through the city and located every church, school, and daycare facility, that's licensed with the state of Missouri. So there might be, and that's what the constitutional amendment defines daycare center as one that's licensed by the Missouri. So this top map is a 1,000-foot radius from all of those points, and the bottom map is what the Planning and Zoning Commission is proposing, which is a 500-foot restriction. The maps are little to get them printed. So as you can see, this is actually north over here. So it is laid out a little bit funny, but when you look at the 1,000-foot, you're really the amount of commercial area available when you use the 1,000-foot restriction limits where these facilities could possibly be located, where the 500-foot provides for some more space for these facilities to possibly be located. So that's kind of where the P&Z fell on this recommendation.
Now, you were saying on the 500-foot, I heard you say something about if you left one building and walked to the next, I mean, it wouldn't be just a direct route, would it?
No, the way it's defined is the shortest path between the 2 points that can be traveled by foot.
Okay.
So
that does not include like walking through the park to a place, right?
I'm sorry?
That does not, for example, that does not include like walking from one street through the park to get there.
If you could travel by foot through the park to get there, then yes.
Thank you.
What was the rationale of expanding it beyond the state requirement? Or, yeah, I guess constricting it to allow it would be the best expression. To allow more spaces for those kinds of facilities to go. When you use the 1,000-foot restriction, like I said, it really limits especially looking at the C2 general commercial districts, which is basically Westwood Boulevard, Pine, Ditch Road, and then the 8 Points area. It really cuts down on what's available. I mean, basically, this is North Westwood, so basically you're looking at this section right here is really, and then the 8 Point section is really all that's the C2
general commercial area that's got much property at all available. And I will say these circles are for example, the junior high school is here. I dropped a pin at the front door of the junior high school and drew a 1,000-foot circle. The 1,000-foot is actually from their property lines. So, I mean, these are really estimates, just kind of a representation, not accurate. You know, if a facility were to apply for a business license, they would have to, you know, it would be measured to get the exact distances as defined in the ordinance, proposed ordinance.
So, I've understood what you just said is if I understand I understand what you're doing, but if I understand it fully, if it was from the property line, those property lines would probably overlap. The circles would tend to even overlap more and more.
Yes.
Okay.
Does the state regulate how many facilities can go in a town or city limits or a county or?
The state set limits on the number by congressional district. For example, the dispensaries, there will be 24 in the 8th congressional district. You know, there is we can't, the city is not allowed to say you can only have this many. The city can say you can't have another facility that's not, I didn't propose, but the city could say you can't have another facility within 1,000 feet or 500 feet of an existing dispensary, for example. So you could limit it that way where there's a certain distance that has to be between them, but you can't limit the number.
May I, Mr. Winters?
Yes, sir.
Just, I think to get to the answer of the question that was asked, the City of Poplar Bluff, nor any other city, licenses any of these 4 categories of facilities. Those are all licensed through DHS by the state. The number of them that are issued and the license comes from the state of Missouri. What the municipalities in Missouri has the right to do through planning and zoning is to limit where those facilities that are licensed by the state can locate. So these facilities will not, these applicants, and there's a ton of them coming, they will not be coming to this city council asking for a license. What they are asking for is for us to tell them where they can and cannot locate, depending on whether they're manufacturing, processing, or dispensing. Does that answer the question?
It did. I think my comment, if I've understood correctly, though, I'd like to stick with that, with the state proposal of the 1,000, instead of giving them even closer and more room to schools, churches, et cetera.
The state's proposal limits the municipality's authority to not expand beyond 1,000 feet. It also has in the ballot language, which is now part of our Constitution, that we cannot allow them, even if we chose to be less than 500 feet. So the leeway that is given to the cities to have the discretion is you can't have them closer. State public policy is can't be closer than 500 feet to those defined facilities. But you can't be so oppressive that you essentially zone them out of your city by going beyond 1,000 feet. So those are the parameters that I think planning and zoning has been dealing with. And Mr. Winters has done a tremendous amount of research on this. For instance, the city of Cape Girardeau, if you want to compare us to them, some people don't, but they ended up just recently choosing 500 feet as their parameter. And other cities, some cities may be going 1,000. Matt may know more about that than I do, but somewhere between 500 and 1,000, depending on local governments just like you, we'll make that determination.
Mr. Black, I also will, one of the other requirements in the constitutional amendment is, public consumption of this product is still against the law. So you can't go to a dispensary, for example, and partake of the medical marijuana products there. You have to take it back to your home in private. It's not allowed to be, just like alcohol is not allowed to be drank at the liquor store. This is not allowed to be consumed in public. That's still against the law. So they won't be going there and leaving. They shouldn't be going there and leaving under the influence. So.
What are the regulatory aspects to these facilities?
As far as the operation of them, they are extremely regulated by the state. To read through the requirements that are put on these facilities, the state is very heavily regulated. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting to read about is the dispensaries. If a dispensary only has 2 employees working, only 2 customers can be in the store at that time. So the third person is waiting outside for somebody else to leave. They have to have monitoring. They have to have emergency alarms that will directly notify the police department. There's some every employee and owner have to be highway patrol fingerprint background checks. There's a wide range of felonies that will eliminate someone from owning or being an employee of one of these facilities. Just to apply to operate a dispensary is a $10,000 application fee that's non-refundable. So they've got to be pretty heavily invested just to even be able to apply for the facility. And the security measures are, like I said, it's a rather long list of security requirements that are placed on these. The state has a process in place to track from the time it's a seed until the time that it's sold to the end user, and tracking reports that are done along the way that are submitted to the Department of Health and Senior Services.
This was a point of discussion, some of you will remember, at the MML meeting a couple of times ago. And it certainly would indicate one to me, if there's a $10,000 non-refundable application fee, there's a lot of money to be made there, or people wouldn't be applying there. And the state did expect a large number of applications, as it was reported at that time. I'd really appreciate some of the other council person's opinion here. I think I would be in favor of doing 1,000, and that isn't going to keep them out. I understand the law and accept that, and I know we must live within that. But yet, I guess I would prefer to limit them as much as is within our power and right to do so. I'd appreciate some of the council persons. If I sense that there's support in that, I would probably make a motion to amend it to 500. But I'd like to hear from other council persons.
Well, I would concur with your belief or thoughts on that, to limit that at 1,000. That's my belief.
How is it decided who can, is it a doctor's, a prescription, or who decides they need this as medicinal purposes?
A physician fills out a form, gives it to the patient. The patient sends it to the Department of Health and Senior Services. They review it, and then they issue an identification card or basically a prescription back to the patient.
And if I may, Mr. Winters, there's a little bit of a distinction. It's not a prescription from a medical doctor.
Right.
It's called a certification of eligibility. So the doctor doesn't prescribe the medicine. The doctor just, based upon the diagnosed conditions, glaucoma, whatever it is, the ones that are very specifically listed, a doctor will certify eligibility under the state regs. Many doctors, including the Medical Association as a group were opposed to this amendment. And there's been a ton of articles written and reports about this as it develops. Probably the majority of doctors in the state are declining that opportunity for them to certify the qualification. They're just not going to do it. There are obviously many, many doctors that will. And just like the history in other states, there have been a lot of pop-up facilities, particularly in the metropolitan areas, where qualified medical physicians, and they got to be an MD, which could be a psychiatrist, which is an MD, who are actually starting to advertise. Come on in, $99.95, bring your medical records, we'll certify you. But what you're going to find, I think, is the vast majority of just practicing physicians are going to say, no, the science is just not there. I think it's dangerous. It's not scientifically established. So if you can get a doctor, some other doctor to do it, you can, but I'm not going to do it. So that's a little bit of the history on that. And this is a very quickly and very heavily evolving process. Ultimately, it's got to be a licensed practicing, Missouri licensed practicing physician that issues that certification of qualification. Then based upon that, the state will then issue a certificate of qualification, which that patient can then take to the dispensaries that we're getting ready to limit location of by zoning. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just want to at Planning and Zoning, I know we workshopped this 2 different meetings. They do have the August 3rd is when they begin to take applications. And actually, that's why at our last Planning and Zoning meeting, we actually workshopped it for the second time and then voted on it that evening, just to give you an opportunity to decide how you want to do this. If you want more time, I actually will be out of town on July the 1st for the first council meeting in July, and be back for the 15th, July 15th meeting. It's however you want to, if you want to take more time to think about it and till I get back to vote on it or workshop it again, however you want to. I just wanted to let you know that what my schedule is. So if you,
So the July 15th meeting would still allow compliance
yes,
for us if we moved it to that
Yes.
session. Mr. Attorney?
Yeah, and actually, to further clarify this, they're going to start taking applications August 3rd. They're not going to start issuing dispensary license.
Right.
So we've got really a little bit more time than that. But Missouri Municipal League and our planning director wants to stay ahead of the curve on this and get it in place in advance of this onslaught that we know is going to come. Okay, we don't know exactly how many of the 10,000 non-refundables on dispensaries we're going to have. We do know already that it's a $25,000 non-refundable application to manufacture, to grow it. And they're going to issue 60, I think it's 66 statewide, or maybe it's 64. And they already have 1,000 applications, prepaid, non-refundable, $25,000 application fees. So it's just absolutely phenomenal.
Someone going to win for sure.
we are limited on what we can. We're going to collect a regular sales tax off of it, but they don't allow us to put those types of application fees on them, unfortunately. So.
Well, and here's the other argument that Mr. Winters didn't point out, and you can apply what weight you want to it. When you take a look at the defined prohibited areas that are within those circles, daycare, schools, so forth and so on, you start doing the 1,000 feet and you are potentially chasing lawfully licensed dispensaries into the county where there is no zoning. And so if you get too restrictive, then they're going to go out to Green Forest or somewhere. I don't mean to pick on Green Forest, but they're going to go somewhere on 100 feet outside the city limits. And if you want to look at it as a greedy position or a practical position, you're not going to collect the city sales tax if you force them 100 feet outside the city limits. So, and, you know, if they want to apply for a place out in the county, we are not a classed county that allows for any kind of zoning at all. So they don't have to meet any kind of standard if they move 100 feet, 50 feet outside our city limits.
Mr. Winters, whatever limit we set on this, whether it be 500 feet or 1,000, this same limit is going to apply to each one of these facilities, correct? It's just not going to be applicable to the dispensaries.
That's correct.
It
yes.
will also be the cultivation, the infused products, manufacturing, and the others.
Yes, sir.
So basically, we'll open that up to these other.
And really, you know, the growing operation is restricted to the industrial areas, and you know, there's churches and daycares and schools are not in our industrial areas. So I mean, but yes, they would still have to be whatever limit we set from those facilities would apply to all the categories.
Councilman Black, you had a motion on?
Maybe a question again of the attorney. If we were to amend that, may it be amended now as it would go to zoning, or would the proper time to be when it comes? I mean, amend it now in the workshop, or it could also be amended at the voting session, either one?
Absolutely. Tonight, we're workshopping it. We're not voting on it tonight, obviously. It's not on the voting agenda for tonight. Mr. Winters and his commission probably need some direct input back from you all as soon as possible as to whether or not you're going to accept. Again, this is the recommendation of your Planning and Zoning Commission. You don't always accept the recommendation of your Planning and Zoning Commission. You don't have to. But it just needs to be done. I'm going to draft the ordinance eventually, if you will take action on it. At some point, I strongly recommend that you take some action to establish your zoning. I'll need to know what number to plug in when I draft that ordinance. But up until the time that the formal ordinance is presented to you to vote on, I need to know what number to plug in.
Yeah. But even then, we could amend it.
You could amend it.
By the way, Matt, I want you to know I do appreciate you in planning and zoning, and I realize it's a state issue that has really come down to us, and I'm sure that you all worked hard and took a lot of things into account. I would make a motion that we pass it to the voting session on the 15th. It would give us a little bit more time to hear from our constituencies, and if the council elects to change it from the 1,000 to the 500, that opportunity would still be there at that time.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion from the audience? Okay. A motion has been made and second to move item C to the voting session on, what was it, July 15th?
Yes, sir.
On
Please.
July 15th. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Winters. Item D, the city council will discuss benefits for future employees.
We've talked about this several times in closed session when we were discussing union contracts, and actually I think it's been bannered around for the last 5 or 6 years, but after some discussions, what I've handed out here is 13 different cities. This was actually done last year sometime, so it may have changed, but I really doubt if any cities offered better benefits than they did then, considering financial status of cities. There's 13 different cities, including Poplar Bluff, Moberly, Jackson, Ozark, Republic, Farmington, Rolla, Maryville, Neosho, Perryville, Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, Hannibal, and Festus. What I try to do is look at cities close to the same population or close proximity to Poplar Bluff. As you can see in Moberly, they pay 100% of the employees' insurance. Actually, all the cities do except for in Rolla. In Moberly, they pay 70% of employee and spouse, employee and child, employee and family. Jackson, Missouri, 100% employee only, and then 65% for employee, spouse, child, or family. Rolla pays 67% of the employee and 67% of the other 3 tiers. And Poplar Bluff, currently, we pay 100% of the employee and 66 2/3 of spouse, child, or family insurance. All of the other cities pay 100% for the employee and 0% for spouse, child, or family. I know that's what we've talked about a little bit. I know we've discussed that, this would be for future employees, would not affect any current employees. If you would pass this in July, then we would say like anybody hired after August 1st. I know there's been some thoughts that this is going to take a lot of years to kick in, but I think in the police department, in the next 10 years, you've got 50% of the department leaving, probably the same in the fire department, and maybe close to the same in the street department. When you make changes like this, you've got to start at some time, but it's my opinion the city cannot just keep doing what we've been doing, paying this much on the dependent insurance. Also, what I was going to recommend is we pay the same on retiree insurance, and anybody hired after a certain date would not be eligible for paid retirement insurance from the city. So I'm just presenting this to you all to get your thoughts and see what you all think.
Well, I'll speak. One of the things I think we do want to make clear, as you've already stated, that it does not affect any current employees at all, and I think that should stay that way. Personally, I don't think we should change with the current employees, feel an obligation that they were hired under in this case. When I look at that, you've surveyed 13 cities, and as far as the employee spouse, the employee child, and the employee family, only 5 of the 13, less than half, have that additional benefit. It's also my observation from some other boards that I have served on and presently serve on, and the insurance benefits that I have received, those are very generous, and it's wonderful that we've been able to do it, but I'm not sure it's in the wise thing to continue to do it, and we ought to be fit more in the norm. And I think your recommendation is a good thing. Again, we protect the present employees and honor that. But after a while, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars as we would move on forward in years to come.
Yes, we are. And I might point out, too, that, anybody hired after this certain date that we place, if they're under a union contract, we still have to honor what the union contract says, but we're actually going through several union contracts right now, so we would just have to get it out of those contracts. I know utilities contract's not up for, I think it comes due in 2021, so they've got another full year on their contract.
But those under contracts, that'd be a negotiation consideration.
Yes.
At a future point.
Yes, sir. I know some of the department heads and I, we were talking about if it would limit the number of people that might accept jobs or apply for jobs. I know we do have a lot of people when they're interviewing, if you ask them why they want to come to work the city, a lot of them will say benefits, but if you ask them what the benefits are, they just say, well, I know you get health insurance and retirement. They don't know the specifics unless one of their buddies or somebody works for the city, so.
But if they go to get jobs in the private sector away from the city, I would bet the majority of them, I know my office doesn't pay for spouse or children.
You're right. I'm not so sure we're the only ones in Poplar Bluff that do that now, so.
So you just need a general consensus?
No, we would need to pass this on to the voting session and change the ordinance.
Make a motion to pass it to, would it be the
July 1?
July 1.
1st.
second, fifth,
July 1st. July 1st meeting.
July 1st? Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item E, the city council will discuss lien waivers.
Yes, city attorney and city planner, myself, we've discussed this several times in the last few weeks, and I actually sent you all a list of some different liens that are out there. I've been reminded that I actually sent the wrong list because there was another column we needed to include, which we didn't. But I thought what I'd do is have a city attorney just kind of explain what we've talked about and where we can go from here, and so I'll just leave it to you, Mark.
What the city has talked about off and on since 2011 is a new procedure put into the ordinance that would allow another option for us to deal with some of these properties that are heavily liened and would otherwise be marketable but for the lien. That was what was discussed initially in 2011. The council at that time didn't take any action on it, and it really hasn't come up since that time. The genesis of that discussion in 2011 was a particular piece of property that was very heavily liened, that a buyer wanted to sell, a seller wanted to sell and a buyer wanted to buy, and he could afford the price of the lot, he could afford the past due taxes on it, he couldn't afford the lien, and that particular developer contractor inquired of the city, if I take this undeveloped property and I build a new home on it, thereby drastically increasing what the tax base is going to be on that property, and I did so within a certain period of time, would you abate or waive the lien? That was the genesis of the initial discussion, okay? Did not become city law at that time. Since that time, there has not been another single request, okay? So let me kind of lay out, and I don't want to be laborious with this, but or insult your intelligence, but let me kind of lay out. Currently, you have an option. Anytime we demolish a building on property, or anytime we go in and force to clean up the property, either under our Chapter 210 or our Chapter 505. 505 is basically the demolition statute. 210 is the tall weeds and junk in the yard and that kind of stuff. Anytime that we issue citations that are not complied with, we take action. We have the power to take action ourselves at our expense and then attach a lien to the real estate. That lien stays with that property until it's either paid or until they sell it to someone subject to the lien, and then that new buyer would comply with it. The long list that you've got are all the current existing liens on the property. The very critical, unfortunately, the very critical column 5, or E, that you don't see on that because it somehow didn't make it onto what we sent to you, is a bunch of further research that Mr. Winters has done that answers the status question of, are the taxes current on it? And have there been payments made on the liens that were filed? It's really critical for you to take a look at that and see, okay? Currently, our statutory by law and by city ordinance, our remedy is we exhaust every effort to get the landowner to do whatever needs to be done to comply with our ordinances, or we can do it ourselves at our expense and slap a lien on the property. That is just a cloud on the property. In order to enforce that lien, you have to go to court through civil legal action and literally file a lawsuit. Then you enforce the lien. The court would then give you a judgment confirming the lien, and then your next step would be to actually take action on that judgment, execute on that judgment, and order the property sold at the courthouse steps to satisfy that money judgment, okay? So filing the lien doesn't give you any interest in the real estate. It just gives you a cloud on the title of that real estate. In establishing the lien as a matter of law gives you not just a lien, but it gives you a court-ordered judgment against the property. The third step is that you have to execute, just like any of you all that have had bad debtors, you go to court, you sue, you get a money judgment, and then at some point you ask the sheriff to go out and find whatever property you can find. In this case, it's going to be the real estate, and sell it at the courthouse steps. That process is slow and it's cumbersome, and there are significant costs involved in terms of court costs, filing fees, so forth and so on. If you look at that list, you're going to see the vast majority of those that are on that list are generally for tall grass or clean up trash in the yard. They're very small liens. It just doesn't make any sense to spend a basic $500 or more in court costs to try to collect a $200 lien. Nobody does that, okay? But that's the process that we would go through. Then the alternative that was suggested is if we could encourage sellers to sell, buyers to buy, by saying, in exchange for your increasing this tax base, we're going to forgive, essentially abate, the expenses that we have incurred in the past and created liens for. So, I mean, the program would be, okay, Mr. Buyer, if you can get the seller to sell it to you, and if you're interested in buying it, and if you want to sign a promissory note to the city of Poplar Bluff for the entire amount of that lien, and then if you build a new building or improve that property in some way to substantially increase the tax base to the city, the county, the school system, the college, and every other entity that we collect taxes on, then at the end of a certain period of time, upon your completion of your end of the bargain, we will forgive or abate what you owe to us on the lien. It's a nice alternative to have. It's a nice tool to have as when it comes into play. But for people that think this is the panacea, this is how we're going to get rid of 120 liens, it's just not going to work, because in order for it to work, you got to have a seller that wants to sell it, a buyer that, and assuming that it's, an undeveloped lot or a lot that's got to just be demolished by private funds and built on new, creating a new tax base, we're not going to use it. There's only been one request for it since 2011. That's how, in all likelihood, that's how rare it is. And the other thing that you'll see on that column E when you get it is that a substantial number of these liens are being paid on. Some of them have been paid down substantially. Some of them haven't been touched since they were liened, and some of these liens exist for 10 or 12 or longer years ago. So it'll give you a better picture of what kind of property we're looking at. And the other thing is that you almost have to look at these properties individually, because you may have a property that's got a $4,000 tax lien on it, and they may have gone in and done $20,000 improvements and increased the tax base on it. They haven't tried to sell it, therefore they don't have to get title insurance, therefore they haven't worried about it. They paid us $5 down, $5 a year on the lien, or maybe paid us nothing at all. But the tax base has gone up dramatically. So that column E that you see will show one or two things. Are the taxes current, despite the fact that the lien's still there? And has there been any progress made on the lien payments? So I'm sorry I've taken so long to explain that to you, but I wanted you to understand the difference. A lien abatement program is fine, but you're not going to use it in probably 1 or 2% of these properties, if any of them, at this point in time. And I know Councilman DeGaris has been very interested in this and talked about it. Maybe to get a better understanding, you can look at those specific properties. We have not taken the time or expended the manpower to go out and see what's really on that property. Has it substantially changed? Have they built a new home on it? Has it run down further? Is it torn down and non-existent? Is it a vacant lot? And you have to look at those properties on a case-by-case-by-case basis to determine which, if any of them, might benefit from a tax abatement, a lien abatement program.
Is there any further discussion?
Just a comment, I appreciate the work you're doing, I appreciate you apprising us of it. It seems to me like it costs us little to have it as a tool in our toolbox, and if it's used some, it could be of a benefit to all the way around.
It costs nothing to have it as a tool in your toolbox. It's just like a lot of tools that you and I both have in our toolbox. We may not use it but once every 5 years, but boy, it's nice when you have that tool, isn't it?
I'd like to see us move forward with it.
So, and we can move forward with it, and maybe at the same time start looking for some other solutions, although we've been exhausting these solutions, as is every city in Poplar, Bluff. You all go to the MML meetings. I go to the municipal attorney's section of the MML, and every single July there is a topic that at least a couple hours are spent on that deals with what do we do to clean up our city, to enforce the liens, and so forth and so on. And at the end of every one of those meetings, everybody just scratches their head and said, well, I guess we'll talk about it some more next time, because no one has really found that silver bullet.
Some of the best minds in the state are gathered together there. I trust that sooner or later it will float to the top.
We hope so. Or as my grandpa used to say, every year we all put our heads together and we form a big rock pile.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to move this to the voting session on July 1st. Or do we need,
Could I make a suggestion, if you don't
Yes,
mind?
sir.
Could we move it to the 15th of July? Mr. Winter's going to be on vacation that week.
okay.
I'm going to be here for the July council meeting, but I'm going to be on vacation both before and after that, coming back for that meeting. So since we haven't been asked to use it, since at least 2010, I don't think a couple of weeks makes any more difference. It gives Mr. Winters, Mr. Massingham, and I a little bit more time to get the ordinance prepared.
Okay, then we will move that to the July 15th voting session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We got a motion. We need a motion.
I'll make the motion, we move that
Oh, I'm
to
sorry.
July 15th.
Second.
Okay, now, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Action required items. The city council will take action on an ordinance approving a request to vacate a, number one, 539-foot portion of Walnut Street running west from South C Street to Short A Street. And number two, to vacate a 23-foot portion of South B Street running north and south from Spruce Street to Lot 23 of Kendall Addition, subdivision. The applicant is Bluff City Apostolic Worship Center, 200 Walnut Street, Poplar Bluff.
Motion for first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Counselor.
An ordinance vacating property located at Walnut Street and South B Street in Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Motion for second reading of Bill 8159.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Counselor.
An ordinance vacating property located at Walnut Street and South B Street in Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Motion for adoption of 8159.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilwoman Parson,
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris,
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton,
Yes.
Councilman Cornman,
Yes.
Councilman Black,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Bill number 8159 has been adopted. Bill number 8160, the city council will take action on an ordinance accepting a bid received for the 11th Street Manufacturing Roadway Project.
Motion first reading of bill number 8160.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Counselor.
An ordinance accepting a bid from RLP Construction Company for the construction of the South 11th Street Manufacturing Roadway Improvement Project.
Motion for second reading of Bill 8160.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Counselor.
Motion for read, I'm sorry.
An ordinance accepting a bid from RLP Construction Company for the construction of the South 11th Street Manufacturing Roadway Improvement Project.
Motion for adoption.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman DeGaris.
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton,
Yes.
Councilman Cornman,
Yes.
Councilman Black,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Bill number 8160 has been adopted.
Lisa didn't vote. Lisa didn't vote.
Excuse me?
She didn't
Oh,
call
I'm
my
sorry.
name.
I'm sorry. You have to
That's
go back
okay.
up. Councilwoman Parson.
Yes. I didn't know if that was necessary.
Okay. 8160 is adopted. Item CC, resolution number 1902. The city council will take action on a resolution making an appointment to the electrical board and the HVAC board
Motion for reading of resolution number 1902.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Counselor.
A resolution of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, making an appointment to the Poplar Bluff City Electrical Board and HVACR Board of the City of Poplar Bluff.
Motion for adoption of Resolution 1902.
Do we have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Horton,
Yes.
Councilman Cornman,
Yes.
Councilman Black,
Yes.
Councilwoman Parson,
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. Resolution number 1902 has been adopted. Item D, resolution number 1903. The city council will take action on a resolution making an appointment to the zoning board of adjustment.
Motion first reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Counselor.
A resolution of the City of Poplar Bluff making an appointment to the Poplar Bluff City Zoning Board of Adjustment for the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Motion for adoption of Resolution 1903.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Mrs. Young.
Councilman Cornman,
Yes.
Councilman Black,
Yes.
Councilwoman Parson,
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris.
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. Resolution number 1903 has been adopted. Item EE, resolution number 1904. The city council will take action on a resolution making an appointment to the Disabilities Advisory Board.
Motion for the reading of resolution 1904.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Counselor.
A resolution of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, making an appointment to the Poplar Bluff City Disabilities Advisory Board for the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Motion for adoption of 1904.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Mrs. Young.
Councilman Black,
Yes.
Councilwoman Parson,
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris.
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton,
Yes.
Councilman Cornman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. Resolution number 1904 has been adopted. Item FF. The City Council of the City of Poplar Bluff will meet in a closed meeting in which they will discuss such matters which are exempted under the Open Meetings Law in Section 610.02, 1.1, .2, .3, .9, .11, .12, .13, and .14 of the revised statute of Missouri.
Motion will go into closed session following city manager's report.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Parson,
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris,
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton,
Yes.
Councilman Cornman,
Yes.
Councilman Black,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Really, the only thing I have tonight is tonight's City Clerk Pam Kirby's last council meeting, and I just want to thank her for all the service at Poplar Bluff, and I can't tell you how much help she's been to me over the years, and especially in the last 4 years of me in this position. And she's just been great to work with, and I don't know that I could have done this job without her, and I appreciate her.
leave your phone number.
She's leaving it with me.
That was,
And I look forward to working with Nevada, so.
okay, thanks again, Pam. You've been a wonderful help and inspiration to me, and I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Okay, we will entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll take like a 5-minute break, and we will come right back. So,
Motion adjourned.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.